This program was produced by and first broadcast on Radio Hawke's Bay, a community access media station. Thank you to New Zealand On Air for making this type of programming possible.
Good morning, listeners. Welcome to Volunteer Vibes. Thanks for joining us. I'm Tracy Weston, Administrator for Volunteering Hawke's Bay, and today I'll be having a chat with Margot, Minett, Earwaker, Chair of Volunteering Hawke's Bay Board. Good morning, Margot. It's great to have you with us today.
It's wonderful to be here, Tracy.
Thanks. For all our listeners who aren't familiar with the work of Volunteering Hawke's Bay, you'll be telling us what that's all about this morning. But firstly, I'm really interested to know what personally inspired you to become involved with volunteering.
Thanks, Tracy. It's interesting because this week I heard somebody speaking and they used the phrase, charity begins at home. And I guess it was a great reminder that we grew up with that phrase being used. And also I grew up with that being the example in our home and our household. My mother was very involved in the local church. So she did give of herself and volunteer her time and her skills at the local church and definitely into the community. In fact, later on in life, won a community award here in Hawke's Bay. So I guess the example was actually given to me from a very young age. And then I also had a great passion for the arts and for dance. And I do know that at one stage when my mother was a bit older, although we had our formal ballet recital, she said, oh, look, there's a local show and they need you to come along and do a sailor's hornpipe. So I'll never forget that. That was sort of something a little bit, different, going along there and performing on stage in that environment. Something obviously kind of connected because it's like years later, I suppose the next sense of volunteering for me personally came, alongside a professional career, but it was local theatre. And for me, it was about how do I actually kind of connect. I was living in Palmerston North, and although I wasn't, I had my dance skills and sort of from history, working and going, okay, I can probably still do a high kick or two. And so went along and auditioned and ended up being part of the dance troupe at Abbey Theatre in Palmerston North. And the reality is, local theatre runs on volunteer give, and so, I mean, a huge variety. You have people there giving their technical expertise, electrical expertise, lighting, let alone obviously the actors, the singers and dancers. So that really opened up for me the rewards which weren't expected that came from giving in that volunteer kind of capacity. So I was, often referred to as a bit of a gypsy. So every time I moved around, because I was in the banking industry and they tended to move you around, I lived in Masterton, so then I performed with Matt's Theatre. And again through that, met wonderful people, lifelong friends. Yeah. Really interesting from, both Palmerston North and Matt's. So that was the give back and the gift, that I got from it, forming these wonderful friendships and feeling part of the community. Which sometimes in professional roles you meet people, but actually this was friendships, true friendships that were formed. At one stage I ended up living and working in Sydney, and again got involved in the North Shore Lyric Theatre and performed over there, did Mac and Mabel, I remember that one. And again, all walks of life, seeing people come in and give of their time, in volunteering roles. Back living in Auckland, the Dolphin Theatre. At that stage of my life, I was very busy, so I wasn't on stage, and it also opened up, well, I could go along and I could actually be an usher. So I was an usher. So, so many organisations have a huge variety of roles, and some are quite demanding. So being involved in a production or a major event could be weeks on end of a commitment. But then otherwise, it can be a simple role, and for 5 nights of a week, you just go along and you usher. And I shouldn't use the word just, because actually it's a crucial role.
Yeah, absolutely.
Every role is actually kind of critical to make something actually, be delivered and available and enjoyable for the audience. So that definitely taught me a great deal about volunteering. And sometimes we forget that the simple things we might do in our neighbourhood, even, when you're growing up in a family, it's almost like, oh, go and help Mrs. Such and Such with bits and pieces. So I think it's a mindset, that actually was the example without actually naming it and being aware of it being volunteering. It's just helping others out, seeing need. So I guess a service orientation, was sort of like, that seed was planted within me and was probably nurtured, by my mother and the example, and then by actually finding an area that really interested me. Yeah, it probably came more to a significant situation about 9 years ago now, and it was even longer. I was training in Australia in a facilitator role, and one of the other women from New Zealand, 5 of us had been selected, and it's like she said, "Oh, actually, I'm very involved in a charity in New Zealand called Dress for Success." Mm-hmm. And I said, "Oh, that's interesting. What do you do?" And she said, "Well, the organisation prepares women for going back into the workforce, gives them clothes, but also gives them workshops and education to build their confidence, for them to be self-sufficient again." That planted a seed, and then 9 years ago, I was in a situation where wanting to, I suppose, scale down my work a little bit to have more flexibility, but very mindful that actually I had some really fortunate skills and experience, knowledge that had been passed on to me. And it's like, well, I think I'm still useful. I think I still got something that I could actually, give to others, and got involved in the organisation. Ended up leading it in operations for a short while, and then moved into being, on the board, and then led the board for a couple of years. So that became in that situation, quite a significant big give. So that was, and so for just recently, I made the call because I now live in Hawke's, returned to Hawke's Bay, but that was up in Auckland. That was the end of that chapter formally, and ended up moving to Hawke's Bay 3 years ago, and there's 4 different charities that I'm now involved with. So volunteering has sort of become my thing, my gig, and I just love that opportunity. Huge variety of what I do now, yes.
That's an amazing lifelong commitment.
It is. And I'd suggest there's a lot of people who actually have given in ways over a lifetime, whatever duration that is, without realising that, you could technically call it volunteering. Helping out, seeing something in need, without it necessarily being, formal. No. So, I think that's the thing to recognise. It's like we have I believe, a very amiable, caring, empathetic, society in New Zealand, and this is a wonderful thing that we can do.
That certainly is. I wonder if, looking back over those years of volunteering, if you have any particular memorable experiences that you'd like to share with our listeners today.
Well, I think it's interesting, isn't it? Sort of, how do you, a good point. How do you bring it down into kind of one or two? There's something when I was at, you could say, the coalface with Dress for Success, that is when you see these women stand before you, and it's almost like it's like a transformation can occur when you can alter quite simply at no cost to them how they present to the world. It's like then they can almost fake it till they make it, and we really embrace that. It's almost like going, well, there's a lot of people doing that in life, and it's almost like this might be the confidence booster that's required, and it's really humbling to see how something that the generosity of others, giving the clothes, it's like in that sort of situation, and somebody just giving their time to support for them and encourage them, the difference that it can make. It's just extraordinary. But earlier this year with Volunteering Hawke's Bay, we had our Excellence Awards, and I've been on the board now for about 20 months, and because the year before we'd had the cyclone, there hadn't been a celebration of that nature, but it had been part of what VHB had done over the years. So we had our Excellence Awards, and it was extraordinary and wonderful to be able to have organisations who chose to nominate others from as an organisation, but also individuals for the various categories. And they came along, and we also had like a PowerPoint going through, which gave snippets of information and on the different organisations. And there were lots. We're very fortunate with VHB. We have 248 organisations registered, with us. And we've got a little bit of an in-depth insight into some of them. Nourish Vanille and Creendale Scouts, Taradale Scouts, Resource, Cape Sanctuary, Citizens Advice Bureau, Can Inspire, Blind Low Vision, Multicultural Society, Grave Concerns, and on and on. Just Big Brothers, Big Sisters, PARS. It was amazing. And I got to see some of their stories of people who are involved in volunteering, but also their stories of what they'd got from giving through those organisations.
Right.
And one of the women who was involved in, actually she was with Resource, she came up to me, she said, this is fantastic tonight because actually we're really getting to know. You get very involved in your own organisation. She said, feel like fully immersed. And she said, but tonight we've learned a huge amount from about other organisations. She said by just a little bit of the sharing to do with why they were nominated and what's their passion and about what they do and what they give, and so that was really wonderful. That was really heartwarming. Yeah, it's like when we can pause and take the time to hear, how great it is. It's like and what people do get out of it. So I just feel kind of continue. I think that was another reminder of why we do this. I'm also a driver for GBB, and I presume on the radio I'm allowed to say their real name, which is Great Bitches Baking. Very unique name. They operate across New Zealand, and I'm drive with them usually on about a fortnightly basis. And so women in Hawke's Bay do the baking and play to your strengths. It's definitely not what I'd be giving, but it's like I can pick it up in the car and I can drive. So I pick the baking up and I deliver it to a number of organisations, and then usually with each drive it might be one or two that I drop off to. So I regard myself as a very fortunate position because, I look like this amazing person who's dropping off this beautiful home baking. It's not me, but it's just like, and get to see, some of the people, some of the, literally walking in the doors of these organisations where there are people in need. And, it is a wonderful thing when you see charity and charities like not-for-profits, organisations, but really it's the people in them and behind them. Is that what we can do when we just actually find a way to care and give a little in a way that we can, and what it actually means to other people. It's that reminder that something like, you're baking a cake or driving a car for an hour. It's like that connection between need and, and people who have something to give, whatever that is. Yeah,
so when you talk to people about volunteering, one of the things they'll talk about is commitment and their inability to commit on
Indeed.
A number of hours. So what response do you give to that?
Well, I think there's so many demands on people. We have, a lot in our community that are challenged for time, financially and in other ways. And I think that sometimes, almost like the suggestion of, another ask, which can come when people start talking about volunteering, can be a little overwhelming. The conversation does come up, I suppose, because I am involved in volunteering in Hawke's Bay. It's almost like, I wish I had time to give. And of course, quite cheekily, sometimes my response is, gosh, not even a couple of hours a year? And they sort of look at me and almost saying, oh, here she goes. What's she going to say now? It's almost like, it can just be that. There could be one event that they're aware of in the community or that's, on the VHB website. That could be, I don't know, it's Hawke's Bay Marathon. Tracy, what would some events that maybe just annually, there could be Christmas things.
Christmas lunches. Yes. We've had requests lately to write Christmas cards.
Fantastic.
And pop things into envelopes, so
wonderful.
It's a one-off.
Yes. Yeah. So almost that micro-volunteering, like a one-off occasion or just an annual thing. And it might be, just a few hours. And you can even do it for some people. It's like, can be they watch TV. Or, and so it doesn't actually need to be a huge time commitment. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be particularly high-end skilled and giving of a high-level experience to an organisation. Just the willingness will open a door, and I think that's the thing to remember. And the reason why people sometimes feel uncomfortable about it, I think, is because we all know it's actually, what you get back from a little give is huge. It really can be, you don't seek that, but it's incredibly rewarding, I believe, that when you help others. And I think we kind of know that in our heart of hearts.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And given the number of problems we're facing on a day-to-day basis in Hawke's Bay and across the world,
Yes.
do you think that a person or a single action can really make a difference?
Oh, absolutely. Apparently it's not necessarily when the butterfly wings. There's a tornado on the other side of the world, but they say the original story was there was a seagull flying, so slightly more significant energy repercussions. But absolutely, I do believe that, and we've seen that, haven't we, in Hawke's Bay? But we do see it in anywhere where there has been crisis and trauma, people pulling together. And I suppose the silver lining can be that we actually see how people engage and step up, and the level of empathy, caring and give is huge in those moments, And it may be that after that they have busy, full lives and they're not necessarily in a formal volunteering role beyond giving at that time of need in a major event. But in that moment, they stepped up, and well done them. And so, I think the thing is finding out what's important to you and is there somewhere. And that's what volunteering Hawke's Bay is about, which is why I got involved, because it's almost like matching, I suppose needs. I've got, I'd love to do something, 1 hour a month, 5 hours a year. I'd like to do 3 hours a week, and saying, okay, great. Come onto our website and have a look and see. It's like put the energy out there, put the intention out there, and I do believe doors, can open, and we can assist with that by actually registering with us and then checking in against the organisations that we have registered on our website and seeing what's coming up. And in the office too, I think you mentioned, Tracy, the other day that with some of these Christmas events, it's been not necessarily a formal job gone up onto our website, but it's almost like going, somebody has a need, great, let's do a bit of a ring around. We can see online who might be available, to do this, and kind of connect the dots for them.
Absolutely. We love it when someone picks up the phone or sends us an email and says, hey, we've got this piece of work, we really need a hand with it. Have you got anyone who might be available? We're more than happy to help bring everybody together. I wonder, do you think young people see themselves in roles of volunteering roles, and what do you think we can do to try and encourage younger people to be involved?
It is probably at the moment recognised, and Volunteering New Zealand puts out a wonderful report every couple of years, State of Volunteering, and it is recognised generally that that is an area of, you could say, challenge, having our youth engaged. Possibly because of the thing we referenced a moment ago, the demands on families and for them to function effectively on time, finances, etc. So often at home there's not as much volunteering witnessed as an example. So therefore, generationally, we actually also see younger people not necessarily getting that example. So through schools, though, however, there are a lot of wonderful programs, and there is still an encouragement to be able to, foster that mindset. There are formal programs within schools, Jacob Venabara, etc., and but also a number of other options that schools, do explore and actually engage their young people in. And that gives them that opportunity. So I think it's when the seed is planted, potentially later on in life it can come back. I know for myself, being pleasantly surprised, contacting, it was my younger son. He was studying at university, and I said, Tim was just talking. He was down Christchurch. I was, up in the North Island. And I said, what are you doing at the moment, Dan? And he said, oh, Mum, I'm just sitting giving plasma. And I said, oh, really? He said, I started doing the blood thing, when I was at university, but I've advanced to plasma now. And I said, oh, okay. What inspired you to do that? He said, well, I really don't have time to do anything else, for the community. And he said, so I thought, well, this is something that I can do. Well, that was like my best Christmas present for a few years, wrapped into one moment, And interesting, my older son, when he was studying, it's just like, I'd spoken, and he said, and I can't talk on Tuesday night, Mum, because I'm going down, and I won't know to this particular. I said, what do you do there? He said, we just go and play games with these kids. They're young teenagers, and they've been in a spot of bother. He said, but we go in and do activities with them. He said, just to, I suppose, he said, it's a buddy thing that they do. And it's like, wow. So, it is interesting. When the seeds are planted at some point around caring and giving to others, generally, it can come back sometimes a bit later in life when they make those choices themselves. And we, no doubt about it. I mean, volunteering in New Zealand, about 21%, I think, that report that I mentioned, state of volunteering, 21% of New Zealanders volunteer at some point, which is quite significant. The other mind-blowing statistic is that $4 billion a year worth of value is given across Aotearoa New Zealand by way of the volunteering hours and give.
Absolutely.
Isn't that extraordinary?
If that doesn't show you that they're making an impact, I don't really know what does.
Absolutely.
So thinking about it from the organisation's perspective, what do you see them doing now in order to attract young people, or what more do you think they could be doing?
Well, I think as much as anything, I think it's continuing to find ways, encouraging, getting alongside. I know at Volunteering Hawke's Bay, we are looking to say, well, what does our youth program, our youth engagement, look like? And so in the first place, it's like kind of, going to the people who actually are doing it, and with our schools and seeing what are they doing, what are they offering, how can we support that, how can we encourage them also to be actively involved and understand opportunities outside of school, and the home, and potentially looking into the future. We had the Hastings District Council Youth Council volunteer at our Excellence Wards in the middle of the year. Wow, they were just amazing, this team of young people. And they came in and they set the room up and that, but they took on some fairly responsible roles with a very, minor brief, but clear. And, you saw what can occur when actually you give a sense of purpose, and the opportunity to young people. So I think this is a thing that for VHB we need to look and say, where can we provide the opportunities just to expose and plant that seed, for the future, and in the hope that absolutely they take through into their future the opportunity to think of others, to think of giving, to think of the community, and the greater good.
Awesome. That's lots of food for thought there. Thank you so much. So just with your differing hats, Margot, you've talked about your experience of volunteering as a volunteer and the payback that you've got for that in ways you couldn't have anticipated. But you're also the chair of Volunteering Hawke's Bay. Do you want to tell us a bit about that?
Yes. Well, I suppose when I first came on the board, and that occurred just after Cyclone Gabrielle, because I was one of those people who needed to leave the area. And when I came back, it's interesting, I just really was aware that it was about 2 or 3 weeks later that I could return to my home here. And the first thing was, okay, how do I give? How do I support actively, here now, on the ground? And Volunteering Hawke's Bay had an opportunity. They were looking for trustees. I came on the board. And the former chair had had a very long and dedicated commitment to VHB. He'd been played various roles within the organisation and was in the acting chair role. Because I'd had former chair experience, it transpired that at our AGM about 7 months after that, I stepped into those big shoes and onto the shoulders of Ken. So thanks to Ken for all he gave, and have been over the last year, because what can be the challenge in organisations is that because it's all volunteers, there's volunteers within organisations, but board members on not-for-profits are volunteers themselves, and often busy working people. Yes, there's usually a couple of years that people can give, but then time pressures, and so can have it be that you have a turnover. So it's been a great year working, building and developing a team, and we're just incredibly fortunate to have a wonderful team of people and wonderful team in the office, and that includes you, Tracy.
Oh,
so,
thank you
and
very
we have
much.
Anna and our fabulous volunteers. So from my position as a chair, one of the best things you can ever do is put the right people in the right seats, on the bus, sometimes we sort of say, and make sure the bus is going in the right direction. So everything that we do is aligned to why we exist at Volunteer Hawke's Bay, and looking to how do we actively, support what's actually happening and in the role of governance. So, I feel I'm honoured to have this opportunity, and really excited by the energy and the commitment that we've got within the team, and how we can serve the community.
Thank you so much, Margot. I can't quite believe it, but we're almost done for time today. So I just want to thank you so much for coming in and sharing all that you've shared with us this morning. So to everybody out there, whether you're an individual or a small business or another not-for-profit organisation and you'd like to take that first step, you can sign up at our website, www.vhb.org.nz, or email us at info@volunteeringhb.org.nz, or just give us a call, 06391 5476. Our thanks today to Radio Hawke's Bay. This show goes out at 9 a.m. every Thursday morning. If you'd like to listen in, that would be radiohawksbay.org.nz. Thanks for listening.
This program was produced by and first broadcast on Radio Hawke's Bay, a community access media station. Thank you to New Zealand On Air for making this type of programming possible.